Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. We're going to go ahead and get started. This session is being recorded so that we can pass it along, and you can slow us down if we're talking too fast. The bit.ly link for our Teach It Forward session today is right on the bottom left corner of your screen. Feel free to chat along the way, and I will be facilitating and monitoring the chat as our panelists share today. So a little getting started, just our session format for our Teach It Forward sessions always follow these three main points. So our panelists today are joining us from across the US. They're going to share their goals for using Gradient, what they tried and what they learned. Each participant has a little bit different experience to share, which is great because all of our users are also coming from different places. Andrea is joining us as a science teacher from a high school. Carmen is also joining us as a science teacher from a high school. And then virtually we have Stacy joining us. She submitted a video, so won't be live with us today, but she will be sharing her experiences from middle school actually in California. So we have a bunch of folks here. And then my name's Katie Selstrom. I'm the Director of Customer Experience for GradeCam. I'm just your behind the scenes facilitator today. The stars of the show are the folks that you see right on our screen. So I'm going to start off with Andrea. She's going to tell us a little bit about how she's used gradient data analysis tools across her journey, and a little bit about the school she works in and what she does. So I'll stop talking and let Andrea take it away from here. Andrea, I think you're still muted. I do that all the time.
I was not going to mute just for that reason. So I started my journey about 5 years ago, word of mouth from a friend. I had used clickers and I liked the data analysis. Maybe that's just the science teacher. And she had told me about GradeCam, did the free trial and decided to sign up and have kept it. I kept it for 3 years and had to justify the cost to myself, but when it came down to it's 50 cents a day and it's paid off. And now we have a school subscription. My school only has 500 students because of that. And because of 30 years of experience in teaching a variety of different science classes, I have 4 to 5 preps. So anything that I can do to save time helps. Our kids are one-to-one, so they do have devices, even in small town rural Indiana. So last year I talked to my assistant superintendent because GradeCam became a game changer for me. Grading takes so much time. And even though we have Canvas, there's just a lot of clicks, and especially with the new quizzes, if you've used those, if you're grading short answers, that's extremely annoying having to click through for different responses. GradeCam, I can use the grade by question and the bottom. I have that on the next slide. The grade by question allowed me to grade 25 AP Chem quizzes in 20 minutes of four FRQs, which was fabulous. So they were getting feedback from me same day. The completion grades I use for homework sometimes, and you put the GradeCam Scantron on there and just wave your phone over it, and all of your grades are in GradeCam in 30 seconds. Then with the grade entry, the Function F8 key, you have them in your grade book. And like, that's what the GIF on the bottom is. It's amazing. We have amped up our PLCs here, and we will be using data a lot more to communicate learning gaps. So I'm ready to go on to the next slide. So last year, after using it so much in AP Chem, our assistant superintendent did purchased the district license, but I don't think there's a lot of us using it because of how we started everything. There just wasn't time for training. But we do have a 5-star instructional coach, and I don't know if other schools have the 5-star people, but it's a tech service that works out of our building, and we actually have an instructional coach. School I was at before just had somebody working on hardware, not on software, and this really makes a big difference. And then GradeCam, whether it's a personal plan or a district plan, you can always ask them for help. I've gotten answers within hours, always same day, with my questions. So I started with the personal plan and have kept it. With data analysis, I really used it initially just for test reflection. And I have an impression that Carmen may talk about that in his how you look at questions and how you analyze those results. So the screenshots I've included are comparing class to class and year to year on the same version of the test, and just allows you to see growth or lack of growth. And just today I entered my first standards. I had not been able to do, I had not taken time to do that before. So I'm excited about that feature. The blue screenshot is the grade by question, where you can see 3 different responses, and all you're going to have to do is click 1 point or 2 points and just keep scrolling. You can add text and feedback with the comment button, and I use the magical text expander to copy and paste, so it, like a keystroke, will enter responses of the same type time after time. So between those things and the data analysis, which allows me to hopefully improve my tests and my teaching each year, I get a lot out of GradeCam. The next slide goes over my tips. So I can't say enough about the time-saving features. They were really changed my world last year, in a year that was a real struggle. That being said, lessons learned, we don't have like a lockdown browser or anything of that sort. So kids can Google things. That's something that the only way I figured out how to deal with it is to talk to, like, to send a request for a report. And I can see what kids have Googled during that hour that they're in my class. And sometimes they just ironically have the same wording on a rubric, and that happens. Tip 2, I am not a detail-oriented person, and I make mistakes all the time. In Canvas, if you have a quiz that has a mistake, you can't change the wording of a question. You can't change its point value without really changing everything. And you have to go back and at least click through and regrade all of the ones that you've graded. If you need to drop a question, like everybody misses it, I don't want that to count. You have to go regrade all of them. Canvas will let you change the answer key, or GradeCam will let you change the answer key. I make my tests out of 37 points, 39 points on GradeCam, but I enter them into my LMS for 35 points. So it lets me curve things how I want to. I can close and open assignments with, that's I think a new feature, without losing information. I can reset assignments. Kids get do-overs, super easy. Canvas, it's the same way, but it is super easy at GradeCam. And started simple with the data, just looking at my test analysis and getting some feedback on what I did well and didn't, hoping to build with adding standards, and then we will be able to communicate that across the science department. Vertical alignment, as like evolution is an 8th grade standard, it's also a high school biology standard, and we can then talk about that. Thanks, Katie.
Yeah, thank you, Andrea. I love hearing your journey too. It's very familiar. so many of the teachers that are GradeCam fans started off on their own and made a similar case like you did to try to get their school or their district to buy it. And it's good to know that you weren't perfect and you didn't have it all figured out at the beginning. I know a lot of us teachers feel like we have to be at a certain level to use technology or to do data analysis, and you just got started and then you've kind of grown along the way, and I'm glad that the tools are here as you grow. So I'm going to ask that if any folks have questions about any of the ideas that Andrea shared, save those. We're going to have a question session right at the end after Carmen and then Stacy's story gets shared. I'll give everyone a chance, but feel free to throw those in the chat and I'll answer them as we go. And for now, we'll get started with Carmen. So Carmen, also science teacher, high school. I'll let him share a little bit about where he's from, what he does, and his journey with using data analysis tools. So take it away, Carmen.
Thanks, Katie. So yeah, I'm a teacher at Fishers High School. I teach chemistry, AP chemistry. I've taught physics. I've taught ICP, basically all the physical sciences here I've taught. Fishers High School is about 4,000 students or so. We've got 2 high schools in the district, each about 4,000 kids. So a little bit larger. As far as if you have any desire to look at my websites here, I do maintain like daily blogs that kind of build off of slightly different format from Canvas down here with our course content things, but that in case you're interested. So you can go ahead and go to the next slide, Katie. As far as what we were looking for with GradeCam, we were doing a lot of Scantron. So when I first started at Fishers 9-10 years ago, they had the Scantron machines, and that's what we were using for the most part. And so Scantron had an item analysis as well, and I'd run through all of my student Scantrons and then run the item analysis through. But what I found was I would mainly glance at it to see if there was a question that was way out of the norm, or if I made a mistake on an answer key, like every student seemed to get this question wrong. But what I wasn't really doing is diving into that data at all to see what they were really answering. And what the Scantron didn't provide me with, even when it did say so many students missed number 10 or whatever, it didn't provide me with what they were answering. And I thought that was one of the most helpful things when we started using GradeCam, was being able to go ahead and actually get feedback right away from my students without having to wait to scan everything through and have it be more detailed feedback. So as you can see here, when I look at an item analysis, I can see what students are answering and what they're getting incorrect. So for a lot of my questions, both in AP and in regular chemistry, there are some distractors that are better wrong choices than others. And we go through that a lot. And so normally when we take a test, I will share this data with my students and we will go through and reflect on what was the most common answer and what was the most common wrong answer. And was that the best wrong answer and what were the misconceptions? So this really started to allow us to find these most common misconceptions that students were having, which allowed me to become a better teacher and allowed me to really dig more into what those misconceptions were and what could I do to address them in further years. And we're seeing the same things across teachers. So it just really started to allow us to look a lot more at data than we were when we were just kind of scanning that simple Scantron through. The other thing that I think students have loved, and it just kind of says it briefly on here, but they're getting immediate feedback. So before, what would happen is they would fill in their Scantron and bubble it away. They would stack that up front. I would scan them all through later. And when I got everything graded, I'd put it into the grade book. Now what I do is, for typically my test, I'll have a free response portion of my test where they're showing work and doing things, and a multiple choice portion. And for that multiple choice portion, they're bubbling in on GradeCam, and I'll have my iPad up front, and they will actually scan their test immediately upon completing their test. So as soon as they're done, they scan it, and GradeCam gives them their result right away. It tells them which ones they missed, how they did. And that way they're leaving with some feedback immediately after the test, as opposed to kind of the mystery of wait till it shows up in Skyward or Infinite Campus or whatever grade tool you use. So that's kind of our first slide. And then kind of going through there, like I said, I can provide this immediate feedback to students. What the other tool that really I have used a lot is I've always done retakes with my students. But again, when I was working with Scantron before, it was very difficult because we'd be pulling out their old multiple choice test. We'd have to try to see what they missed. Did it get marked on there? Did it not? And now all of that data is stored in GradeCam. And so when I go to do retakes with students, it makes it really, really easy to bring them in during our instructional time and pull up this report in the middle here, which is the student overview report. And it will show them what they put for their answer, what the correct answer is. And it allows us to really start to dig in to see what did they miss? Is it the same concept over and over? Is it a bunch of random different concepts? And it really has allowed us to have those retakes have a lot more meaning based off of their prior test, as opposed to feeling like I just need to relearn everything. There's clearly stuff they do very well. We don't need to necessarily relearn that. We just need to work on where those misconceptions were. And that student overview report has been really, really helpful for us to use with students as they start to get, more feedback, more detailed feedback for something like a retake on their individual report. And I can pull those up really, really quickly. We have what's called target instruction time, so we can work with students in the morning on every other day during our block. But I had probably 20 students in this morning, and I'm able to pull these up really, really fast. I have different versions, and I can very rapidly print every version. It doesn't matter. It doesn't take hardly any time to be able to get that report printed into them along with the test, so they can see what they're doing. And then I can come around and sit down with each student and work through that report with them after they've had a few minutes to look over it. So it's been a really, really helpful tool, a really nice piece of data for students to look at, not just me. And the other piece that's been helpful, Andrea had mentioned with PLCs, when we do common assessments, it has been very, very helpful when we do a GradeCam common assessment. We can share that data between teachers, and that data all goes into the teacher overview. So you can see on the bottom image down here, there's my name, but there's other teachers' names that are blacked out in there as well. But we can all see each other's data. So we're all able to look at it and see who's did well, who didn't. And this is one of those things that has really helped kind of open up our PLCs a bit to kind of that vulnerability as teachers to be able to share and say, hey, how did you do? How did things go? And really be able to see it in a very clear light and go in and see which questions students are missing. Is it common amongst all of us? Is it something where we maybe need to rewrite the test altogether? Or is it something where maybe a teacher has a better method of teaching a certain skill? And that's on that teacher overview has been really helpful for us on that. So my kind of tips to take away, one thing that I found when I was doing this before, I was making multiple versions of the test. And when I would have students scanning, if I had multiple versions, if I had like unit 1 test A, then I also had unit 1 test B, it had to switch between versions as it was scanning, and that took longer and it was slower. And there is a version key creator in there. So now I just have a unit 1 test and I go in with the keys and create different versions. And once again, I can print those forms really, really easily for students to bubble in without having it be a long, tedious process. And it scans rapidly. So it doesn't matter if they're version A, B, or C in class, they're all scanning instantaneously, which has helped with cheating and things like that, obviously, and has helped really make sure that they know everything they're supposed to know. The other thing, as I said earlier, students have really liked receiving immediate feedback on the results on multiple choice style questions, things that I don't have to go in and actually grade right away. They love seeing that. I mean, it's something that every single one is very attentive on as soon as they're coming up. And then our collaborative teams in a PLC that give common assessments, it's a really easy way for us to share data. So when we get into our PLC session, we can just pull a GradeCam up, hop in and look at the data, as opposed to having to be like, did you bring your data today? Did you bring your data today? It's all in one spot, and it's a lot easier for us to look at.
Thanks, Carmen. I love both you and Andrea both touched on feedback, feedback for yourselves and how you look at the data for your PLCs, and you start asking questions of colleagues, but then how much kids, scholars really appreciate getting the feedback right away. I noticed when I started using tools like this with my students, it changed the conversation. It's like they didn't have to wonder how they got an A, B, or C. It's like they knew right away what they needed to work on. So that's so awesome to hear that that's how it's going for you.
I appreciate the changing. It's no longer how did I do? It's more trying to dig into the why, right? So that they're actually looking at individual questions. They're no longer waiting for the how.
Yeah, exactly. And then they get to own it, which is even better.
Yep.
So our next presenter is Stacy. Stacy wasn't able to join us today. She's driving around. She's a data coach, so a little bit different role than Carmen and Andrea. And she gave us a little video. So let's see if I can pull this up. Excellent. So Carmen, I'm just going to ask you when I hit play if you can actually hear the sound. You'll be my like technical tester here, and we'll troubleshoot if not. But Andrea's story is that she's a data coordinator that supports a few schools, and you'll hear about that in just a moment. And GradeCam kind of started with her school principal that had assessments that she had helped design for intervention purposes in the topic of math. And so Stacy's role is to kind of support all of her teachers at these schools to look at the data. So let me go ahead and press play and see how this goes.
Hello, my name is Stacy Takamoto, and I work for LAUSD as the problem-solving data coordinator. I currently support 4 schools with a math intervention program. So I was first introduced to GradeCam, as it was formerly known, or Gradient, by my principal, Dr. Caruza. She had designed a math intervention model that relied heavily on data to drive instruction. So she needed a tool where teachers could analyze data in all different ways. She wanted the tool to show the data broken down by individual students, by class, by grade level, and also school-wide, then to take that data and use it to drive their instruction. She also wanted teachers to be able to use data to provide constructive dialogue for teacher collaboration and planning. So Gradient worked well and supported all of those needs. Not only that, but the platform was really straightforward, and they also used color to match specific data points. Therefore, it was pretty easy for our teachers to navigate and to capture and understand the students' level of learning. Initially, when our school first began using Gradient, we rolled it out using the Scantron version from GradeCam. This is where the students had an ID number and had to bubble in their answers. At our school site, the students would then go to an iPad that we had set up and scan their own papers. The students really enjoyed doing this because they got immediate results to their assessment. My colleagues also loved it because it was a huge time saver. They didn't have to hand grade the papers, and scores were shared in real time. However, during the pandemic, we could no longer do that because we transitioned to doing everything remotely or digitally. But Gradient was prepared for that. Our students were familiar with the platform, therefore transitioning from the Scantron version to doing it electronically was pretty seamless. Right now, 4 other schools hopped on board and are now using Gradient as well to analyze their data to support their instructional program. They also use it for math intervention to identify specific standards or targets and to differentiate instructional needs during their tutoring sessions. Also, currently our district is supporting our African American students through the Black Student Achievement Plan, so we are using the specific data reports that Gradient offers to support this initiative. Some of the challenges I faced from personal experience were in the beginning when we first piloted Gradient. I think we are one of the only schools using it in LAUSD, so it was a bit laborious to sync the students with our learning management system. I would manually upload the school roster to Gradient. However, every time our school had a new student admitted or a student left, it would need to be updated again. If not, there were some hiccups in the grade syncing in Schoology for the teachers. What's great now is that we don't have those issues because Gradient and our learning management system support each other. Some of the features my colleagues use the most are the multiple choice feature, the in progress option, and definitely the reports. The in progress option allows our teachers to see where the students are on an assignment. They can see if they turned it in, how they're doing on a specific question, or how many questions they still need to complete before submission. This is important because we give weekly formative assessments. So knowing this information, we can encourage our students to submit their assessment within that specific window of time. Again, the reports are easy to access and you can view student data in multiple ways. Our students really love a friendly class competition. So the reports are also used to motivate students to not only do well individually, but as a class. Our grows. Gradient syncs our scores pretty efficiently with our grading and learning management system. However, we are shifting towards a mastery learning and grading approach to grading, which we call EGI. So I think it would be helpful if we could pull specific questions or standards to align with the gradebook. For example, if I'm focusing on a specific learning target, I would like to pull the specific questions or question on my assessment that supports that target, and then insert the score that is aligned with the proficiency scales in the gradebook. Another thing that would be beneficial to see is if Gradient could offer partial credit. For instance, if students were able to correctly choose 2 out of the 3 answer choices, they would be able to get some credit for the problem. Overall, we are very, very happy with what Gradient has to offer. We went from 1 to 4 schools using Gradient, which shows you how teachers are finding this tool very valuable. The data it is providing us is really a key feature. Because we are able to access the data in real time, it is improving teacher responsiveness to instruction. It ensures instruction is relevant because they are adjusting instruction as needed based on the real-time data and allowing teachers to provide specific feedback in a timely manner.
It's so nice having Stacy with us virtually to share her story. There are a few more slides in the deck that I wanted to share on her behalf. So because of the role that she is in supporting 4 different schools, her emphasis is on making it easier to use the reports. So she calls out a weekly focus for each of her schools because they are using these common assessments on a weekly basis in this intervention program for math called DART. And so you can see here some screenshots of what she includes in her weekly newsletter for her team of teachers that are working together to really target and focus learning for students. In the top left, you can see their assignment that they've given, and she's provided some summary data across the week for their performance. On the right, you can see some of the teacher by standard evidence that they're using to pinpoint what standards they'd like to target and where they're making growth and who has strengths and who needs additional coaching or support. And then because of some of her initiatives for equity purposes, they're really taking a look at how they're serving all students. So you can see that the reports down below that use some demographic characteristics to look at the data are also there as well, in addition to just looking at standard by standard analysis. So it's great to see yet another use of Gradient. Carmen and Andrea are both using the scanning feature with reports, and Stacy and her team have really dug into the online aspects with the reports as well. So it's great to know you can do both. A couple of things, and then I'll open it up for questions. And even Andrea and Carmen, you've been able to hear each other's stories, so you can ask each other questions as well. But Stacy and a few of the other panelists mentioned some resources or topics that maybe not everybody that's listening to this webinar are aware of. So I did include the data guides that Gradient provides for folks that are new to our reports. We have this training guide section on our Training Hub website, and specifically this data conversations guide. This is written by a fellow coach on our team that was in this role herself and walked through reports with her teachers and her own team. So if you wanted to look at, what Carmen showed, for example, the item analysis report and what types of questions you can use when you're looking at it, or what kinds of conversations you can have with students, that's there for you, as well as our student by question report and our class by question for those PLC conversations that you're likely having. Another resource I wanted to mention that Stacy brought up was that in progress option. When you're using Gradient online, there is a way to monitor students how they're doing in the moment of the test, so that you can see what question they're on, where they got stuck. So there's a quick video here to show it, and then just scrolling through shows you how you can filter your responses tab within an assignment and how you can see that in progress work of what questions students are missing, where they currently are, when it was last updated. That way you can stop in the moment and say, hey, everyone, let's take a look at question 2 together, just to give a little heads up before that testing window closes if you're live with your students. And then just 2 other resources, partial credit, Stacy listed as a grow. So just wanted to let you know that partial credit is available within Gradient. Sometimes we're not always familiar with all the things the tool can do. So that's actually already an option that you can go in and edit your key and give partial credit or change the point values for any of your questions. So feel free to take a look at that link. And then that last option she mentioned was, wouldn't it be great if I could transfer grades by standard? You actually can do that as well. So you can not take the overall score of an assignment, but just the standards and transfer performance just on the standards that you feel like students should have mastered, maybe based on spiraling review or whatever else that you're doing, which is a great feedback option for students. Okay, so I'll stop talking about those, and Andrea and Carmen, and I'll check in chat too. Do you have any questions or anything you wanted to follow up on? Oh, Andrea, I think you're muted.
Flashbacks from last year. I wanted to mention the student portal. I use it a lot. I did comment on it during my presentation that you do have, like on a test assignment, depending on your setups, and I don't know what setups are options out there, but kids can go from GradeCam student portal to the Google and Google test questions. And that's unfortunate that they do that. To offset that, I've done what Carmen does with the bubble sheet, just so that they don't have that temptation. But the grade by question feature, when they can type out their responses, is just, and I've told them, make smart choices. I can look up your search history. Don't make me do that, but it's to benefit me. Like, I can grade so much faster. And if you could see my desk right now, like, you would understand my paper problem. I can't handle paper. Like, there's too much paper in my life. So I don't want their paper. And that really helps. The student portal has taken a lot of that off of me, and they do get the immediate feedback that Carmen mentioned. Like, if they're doing, whether it's just a formative assessment, a real quick check-in, or an actual assignment like Punnett squares I've done on that, and they get the feedback right away. And you guys changed options on student portal last year so that they can go back, like, we can reopen the assignments and they can go back and make corrections, and it's fabulous. So thanks for doing that. I'm going to let Carmen talk, but I do have another question too.
And before Carmen talks, just so you know, Andrea, you can, for free, install a lockdown browser so that students can't do copying and pasting anymore. You also can set up a restriction right now without downloading anything to disallow copy paste while they're in the online assignment. So
it's not copy paste.
It's just looking it up.
They go look up AP rubrics that are out there.
Yeah, so that part we can't stop. But yeah, feel free to look at the lockdown browser. They always have this too, which is the trick. You know, they're on a device and then they're using this.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah, but go ahead.
That. I didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah, I'll put it in the slides as questions on that questions page. Carmen, did you have anything you wanted to add?
I don't think so. I think I had a lot of great feedback in general. So.
Okay, great. Let me just check the chat real quick to see if there's anything else from folks. Nope, doesn't look like it. So I'll go ahead and stop recording. Sometimes folks want to ask questions when we're not recording anymore. So thanks for joining us if you're stopping here. Otherwise, feel free to stay on.